Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. This week's guest has 2 daughters, and when they started using screens during the pandemic, they were torn in wanting them to be tech savvy, but also wanting them to be well-rounded. They set screen time limits, but their kids threw tantrums and rebelled when their time was up. Life turned into a negotiation. I think we've all known that. As parents, they found that fighting against Roblox, YouTube, Minecraft and TikTok was a battle they could not win. Like all parents, they tried parental controlling apps, but the existing technologies didn't work. They were hard to set up, their kids broke out, and they got bombarded with notification requests for extra screen time. Fundamentally, they found the approach of simply limiting screen time flawed. Something better was needed, and so they made Carrot and Cake. The app focuses on improving the quality of kids' screen time, and now their kids have balance, are happier, and their family has more time to connect. This is the Strong, Single and Human podcast. Hi, Gwenyth Jackaway from Carrot and Cake. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, I can't wait to delve into the subject that we're going to delve into today, because what basically we're talking about is the effects of digital media and social media and things like that on our children. And then we're going to delve into what Carrot and Cake is and how that can help us single parents and parents deal with and manage this online nightmare that we have to deal with every day. So look, first question then is, how has parenting changed with the introduction of like social media and the internet?
It's a great question. So in order to begin to address it, I want to step back a little bit, since you're asking how has parenting changed. That's basically a history question. Yeah. And a little bit of my training, a little bit of my background is I am a former college professor, and I spent almost 30 years teaching at Fordham University and the Department of Communication and Media Studies. And I am a media historian. So that means I'm interested in the history of new communication technologies, or that's my focus within media history. So, you know, we're speaking right now, which is one of the basic ways human beings communicate, but you're on the other side of the world. In fact, you're in tomorrow from my perspective, which is weird. Hi from Monday, you're in Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm in Tuesday.
Yeah, you know, and I'm in New York and you're in
Melbourne, Australia. I know.
Melbourne, right? And then this is live, and that's remarkable, right? So we are engaged in mediated communication right now because there's a medium, some technology in between us. And, you know, for much of human history, there were really only a few options. There was the spoken word. Eventually there was writing.
Yeah.
And of course, there's all the other ways we communicate non-verbally, our clothing, music, dance, you know, even the way we decorate our houses is a form of communication. Yeah. But it was really kind of, you know, not a lot of change in that area for a very long, long time in human history. And so all of the different kind of basic human activities, including parenting, took place within a particular communication environment. And then over the last 200 years, we've seen a rapid increase in new ways of doing this thing, communicating. And because communication is such a central part of what humans do, when we have another way to do it, a whole new way to do it, it opens up new possibilities and it brings new challenges.
Yeah.
So I just want to pause and make some space if you want to ask any questions. And
well, and look, I wanted to make an observation, right? Because I sit here at 50, right? And when I was a child, which was some time ago, right? We had none of this social media. Social media, really, Facebook has only really been around since 2008, 2007. Like,
it's very short, very new.
Very short period of time. So Twitter, Facebook, Insta. I mean, Insta's even less time. And then you've got Snapchat and TikTok and things like that, right? Yeah. They've only been around for not even 10 years, right?
Handful of years.
And the influence, positive and negative, that it's had on the world has been massive. And I don't think we realize the implications of this new environment that we sit in.
That's right.
I think it's isolating. I think it is challenging. I don't think it's healthy for our children in some ways. And I personally, and this is why I was fascinated to get you on, right? I personally sit here and I go, when I was a kid, I was out all day. I was fit. I was healthy. I was out all day. I saw my mates. I was able to communicate face to face with people. I could pick up body language a lot. I learned to pick up body language. And there was a lot of learnings that I had visually, as well as auditory and all of those things, right? So we cover off all of those, right? Social media gives you a window into somebody's life, but it doesn't give you the whole picture. And I think it's, I'll be interested to hear your thoughts, right? Because these are my observations, right? I'm not an expert on this at all, right? But I'd sit there and I go, as a parent, I parent from what my experience is. And I know potentially that may not be the right way to parent my son, because I want him out and running around and playing with his mates, but he does it online now, running around on computer games.
Right. So you're right. Life
There's a lot there for you. Sorry,
There's a lot. Right. So no, this is all quite relevant. So you asked me, how has parenting changed? Yeah. So I think, and you're setting me up for my answer, which is, of course, parenting and childing, right? The experience of being a child and maturing takes place within a larger social, cultural, and technological context. So we are all situated within the time in which we were born, right? If you and I, so we're both single moms.
Yeah.
If we, 200 years ago, we would have been seen as witches or, some other, maybe not even that far back. Right. But our life is now considered normal and okay. So some of what we get used to, is just because of the time and the place in which we live. Right. And if we lived in some other country, even right now with a different religion and a different set of values, we wouldn't necessarily have the lives we have right now. So I think it's when we're comparing our childhood and what it was like for our parents to today, I think it's important not to glorify and imagine that everything in the past was necessarily better.
Oh, right. No.
Right. That's what we were used to. And now the rules are different. But so one of the challenges for parents in, the 20th century parents and now 21st century parents is because technology is changing so fast, we can't just rely on doing it the way our parents did. Right. So for such a long time, the human experience didn't change for sure, but not as fast. So people could say, well, I'm going to either do it the way my parents did, because I think they did a good job, or sometimes people swing in the other direction and they're like, I'm not going to do it the way my parents did. I'm going to do it some other way. But we, as 21st century parents, can't say, well, how did my parents control or not control my social media use? Because that was just not a factor in the world. All right. So, however, what has been a reality between parents and teens for at least the past 100 years is adults worrying about kids and new media. That's not new. So I'm not sure what it was that, because I'm a bit older than you, I'm not sure what it was that your parents were worried about. But when I was young, TV was new. And
Well,
my mom was very concerned about and cautious about TV viewing. So I was only given a very little bit of TV each day and only educational TV. And, then she made me run outside and play and do other things. And it so annoyed me that I became a communication professor because I wanted to understand what's the problem with all this technology. And now I spend so much time reading books about media that I still don't watch as much TV as I might. But I bring that story up because, if you go back through the 20th century, there were people who were worried about movies in the 19 teens and 20s. In the US, there were congressional hearings about comic books in the 1930s and 40s. There was a lot of worry about rock and roll when it first came on the radio, and people worried about Elvis. And, then when video games started coming in the 80s and 90s, before the internet, just the standalone video games on standalone computers, people worried about that. So I think it's important to place all of this in a bigger historical context, which is that as much as human beings like a little bit of novelty, like, oh, I want a green one because I already have a blue one, like new improved, that's used a lot to sell products, but we like things to change in small gradations. And when change happens too fast, there's often pushback and fear. So I think that's one thing to remember as we're talking about all this. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything's great about social media or the internet or digital communication. But what it does mean is, to answer your original question, how has parenting changed? Parenting has to change because now parenting means parenting in the digital age. And to make things more complicated, as you've pointed out, we're all still just getting used to this stuff as well. So none of us grew up with it. And we took on our digital habits as adults. And I don't know about you, but I mean, part of why I'm in this business now of talking to people about digital wellness is I noticed my own digital habits. So I never had a problem of getting hooked on TV. That was what my mom was worried about. But I definitely have some social media behaviors that I have to keep an eye on. For me, it's about news. I'm a news junkie, and it doesn't really make sense. I'm not in politics. I'm not a journalist. I really don't need to know every hour what's happening in Washington, D.C. or wherever. But I get something out of that. And I'm often find myself picking my phone up without even really consciously deciding to. Just suddenly my phone's in my hand and suddenly I'm scrolling, and then I'm outraged, or I'm sharing a post to someone, and then 20 minutes have gone by and I didn't even mean to. So
it was amazing that I went out to we've got a dumpling festival here in Melbourne, a Chinese Japanese dumpling festival, and it was amazing. I went out with my new partner to the dumpling festival with the kids, and both kids wanted to go on their phones, and me and my partner, who are similar of age, we both just sat there loving, soaking in the atmosphere, watching people, like observing and seeing what was going on and commenting on, people and situations and scenarios. And we were observing the world around us, right? And both our kids were like zoned in on the phones. And if we removed and took the phones away, it was like, oh, we're bored. What do we do now? And I'm like, oh my God. See, observe the world, look at people, observe what they're doing, go, and they're like, that's boring. And it's a parent-child thing as well, right? At the end of the day, it is like, we don't want to do what you guys are doing. You guys are boring, right? But like it's completely different.
And it's complicated because while the two of you in that particular situation had your heads up from your phones and were looking around, and I don't know anything about your life, but certainly kids see parents with their face in their phone at some point, right? And they don't know what you're doing, and you might be working or doing something serious, and you're not just scrolling or wasting time, but they don't know what we're doing when we're online, and they see adults all around them engaged in this behavior. So of course they imitate it, right? Because that's what little humans do.
Yeah, exactly.
They imitate.
And that's scary. I mean, I must admit. And also my son has turned around, and not like I work a lot. So my son has turned around, he's a single parent, you do, right? My son's turned around and gone, I need your time, right? I need some time with you.
Wow.
Because, and and I recognize that too. And it's like, so I switched off phones and iPads in the evenings. So in the week, in the evenings, we have dinner at a table together, and we might sit down and do something together. So when I say I switch off iPads, it might be that we're both on Minecraft together, playing Minecraft or doing something together. And then he'll get half an hour where he can watch TV, chill out, do whatever while I'm getting the house ready for us to go to bed. All right. But it's consciously as a parent going, right, to allocate time. And
that's it. It's about using our attention with intention. So I like to say that in that way, partly because it rhymes and it makes it easier to remember. So intentional attention. So I want to talk in a few minutes about some of the technology and the economics of why these devices feel so addictive. But, our attention is one of the most valuable resources we have. And we live at a time now where there's a tremendous amount of competition for our attention. Lots of people are trying to get our attention. Why? So they can sell us stuff, right? And human beings have never had access to this much cognitive stimulus at the touch of a button. So the moment we do get bored, right? If you're an 8-year-old walking around and, you have this experience, or even
a 52-year-old, let me go there.
Sure. So, right, we're used to such an intense level of cognitive stimulus all of the time that when the environment around us feels like it's not stimulating enough, we always have an alternative place to escape to. So, and behaviors, as I'm sure you know, are habits that we can cultivate and we can break and we can retrain, right? And so, a great answer to your son saying, I'm bored is great. That's an open space where something can now play a game. Look for how many red things can you find, or how many people with funny hairdos, or what, you can teach him in that situation that you were in, how to people watch. Pick a person, make up a story about them. My father and I used to do that. We would look at two people walking by and okay, let's create a whole story. Who are these people? And, it's teaching observation skills. Or if you're standing in line at the bank or wherever, and that's often when people pull out their phones, when they're standing waiting for something. So no one's talking to each other. No one's looking up and making eye contact. It's very easy to think that this is just about kids today or teens today, but it's the whole.
It's everyone.
This is a global issue. And my sense is that we're really just at the beginning of learning how to live with these technologies. It's interesting. People don't worry so much about TV anymore.
No,
I remember that there used to be a lot of articles and scholarly papers and a lot of research. TV, what's TV doing? Kids' brains. That conversation seems to have just gone away, and now we've moved on. And so I think part of what is going to happen is the level of intense focus that's on this right now. First of all, I think it's very good. It's important. It's time for us to have this conversation because the human experience has been transformed by these technologies. And for a long time, really up until very, very recently, it was the technology companies and the advertisers. And, in the US, it's about Wall Street, but, all the big finance, the folks who are making tons of money off of buying and selling our attention, they've really been running the show. And now it's time for all of us, the users of these technologies, to get in the driver's seat and say, all right, we're going to incorporate these devices into our lives. We have already incorporated them into our lives. Now let's use them with intention and with an awareness and an understanding of how the technology has been designed to hack our brains, because that's not a conspiracy. That's really how it works. So
no, and I agree, right? We just didn't know about this like 10 years ago or whatever. And
No.
like the algorithms, and that, to me, that's the scariest side of things, right? Depending on your political views, what you're interested in, what you even search for in Google.
Mhm.
God love Google, but you can do a search for Google and then you get all the adverts come up on your feeds, right? And you just
Right.
go, I just did one search, right?
Right.
I've now bought what I want. I don't need to see everyone else's adverts for it. Like, bugger off, right? And it's interesting how there are internet browsers that are now coming up that don't have algorithms, that when you go for a search, you search and there is no algorithm coming up. It will be interesting to see how Google moves through all of that. But yeah, it's scary.
So this is the economic model. So I want to talk, we've begun to talk about this. I want to link it to issues of brain development, but first just how it works for all of our brains. So the folks who created social media, and I'm going to focus on that for a moment, but you're absolutely right. It's so Google and also YouTube and all the contemporary social media, this is particularly true. They based their technology design on things that were learned during the early stages of video game design. So there's a reason there's so many power-ups and rewards, and usually there's some sort of storyline where you're going through some experience and you're rescuing someone or fighting someone, and as you move through the game you level up and you get rewards and points. That feels really good to the brain. It's like that, the thumbs up. There's a reason that all the social media uses a thumbs up. That feels good, right? Normally in our day, we don't have people walking around going, thumbs up, great job, great. That tends to end after you're about 5 or 6 in school, right? You're not always getting gold stars. In fact, if anything, after a while, as you move through schools, teachers are like, yeah, you need to work a little harder, right? But with little ones, we're giving them a lot of encouragement. And that feels nice to level up. And then you get an extra lives, which of course doesn't happen in real life. No. You can die in the game and you just play again.
And then you just play again. You learn from,
That's right. So and we've learned a great deal about the brain over the last few decades because of the fMRI machines that can scan the human brain while people are alive, right?
Yeah.
So we've learned a lot about some chemicals that are called neurotransmitters, which you probably know a little bit about. Serotonin is one that a lot of people know about because it's relevant for some of the antidepressants, right? So SSRIs,
serotonin, dopamine,
right? So
melatonin. As a parent, all of those are key things, right?
Exactly, right. So serotonin is it's a feel-good chemical. If our brains are not making enough of it, we may not feel as good as we could. Oxytocin is the sort of love chemical when you're holding a brand new baby, when you're holding a little puppy or a kitten, that feeling, that's oxytocin. Nursing mothers are full of oxytocin. And then there's dopamine, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter that helps us seek rewards. So it's really that seeking feeling. So, you talked about, you did a search. Let's say you're searching for, a pair of new winter boots or something, and you're in the mood to shop, and you're like, okay, and you start, and you're looking around and, you're hunting because you have something in mind. And then eventually you find the thing. The dopamine is that it's the thing that gets you up and going to search for your goal. That helped us survive in nature, right? You have to find food, you have to find shelter, you have to find mates. Dopamine still serves all of those functions for us. And it feels good. It's got that kind of adrenaline feeling, and you can see it on the faces of people who are in gambling casinos, or they're really fixated and they're feeding coins into the machine, and people who are deep in a video game have that same look on their face. And when you watch people scrolling, especially at the beginning of scrolling, once you scroll for a long time, it starts to feel not so good, which is a different piece that's called dopamine feedback loop and dopamine overload. So the way these platforms were constructed, so they're social media, right? So what are we seeking? Ultimately, we're seeking connection. We want to be liked. We want to be loved. We also want to know that we're part of a community. So it feels good to find other people who, like in my case with news, I like finding other people who have similar opinions, right? You're like, oh yeah, see, I'm not the only one. I feel like that too. Right. So we're seeking all of these things, and social connections are essential for survival, right? Solitary confinement, isolation, those are punishments, because being cut off from the tribe, is ultimately not good for your survival. So social media is designed to tap into all that stuff. And that's part of why it feels so hard to put it down. Ironically, we're not getting addicted to the technology. We're getting addicted to our own brain chemicals, which is sort of interesting to think about.
Isn't it?
Right.
Because those brain chemicals were there to help us survive. But now it's and survive as within the tribe, right? But our tribe is now online, which is a tribe in itself, right? And is social, but it's pretty isolating when you're sitting in your room scrolling around, right? Because like it's made the world smaller, I think, in the fact that I'm talking to you and you're in New York, right? And so I'm gleaning the information from you all the way across the ocean, right?
Right. And that's amazing.
It's unbelievable. And like I can then educate myself on what you guys are doing in the US, and you can educate yourself on what we're learning about things in Australia, right?
Exactly.
And they're different, and we learn, and we progress and learn quicker, I suppose, because we're not learning in our isolated pockets and then finding we're collaborating together as a world. And I wish we would do this in so many other ways, but collaborating together as a world to learn about all of these different things, right? And that, to me, I look at it and I go, that can only be good, right? To get all of these brains to, well, I know, and like nobody can see you, but like you're sort of shaking your head and going, well, maybe. But the thing is, my biggest concern is the algorithms and what's being thrown out, because it's not, those algorithms are reinforcing somebody's viewpoint, which may not be correct. And that's my biggest concern, is that instead of educating people across the breadth of knowledge that we may have out there, we're just, because of the algorithm, drilling them down still further into a deep hole that's not going to help them. I don't know. Right. Tell me your thoughts.
Okay, well, so the algorithm, first of all, is not a person. It was a
I know, but it feels like it.
But these are mini programs.
Yeah,
that it's we're all talking a lot about AI. This is an example of AI. It's gathering information. It's learning, right? It's learning from your online behavior. Oh, this person is interested in this. The job of the algorithm is not to educate or help solve the world's problems. The job of the algorithm is to keep you online.
Yeah. Because
then they can gather more data about you. And the more data they gather, the more they can give you a feed that they think, based on your previous online activity, will keep you there longer. And one of the things that we also know about the human behavior and the mind is that more and more extreme content will capture our attention even more. So you might start out thinking, oh, I'm kind of curious about this political movement, which might encompass lots of different ideas. And then you go there and then they're like, well, now here, let's tell you about a really subgroup of this. And, we're interested in novelty, and we're interested, and fear motivates. And, there's a certain kind of cognitive stimulus that's going to really capture our attention. And that's the job of the algorithm. Why? This is an attention
Keeps you
economy.
online longer, doesn't it?
It's an attention economy, and our attention is being bought and sold. And, there's a reason these products are free. What are you paying per month for your Instagram? Right?
Exactly.
Because you're the product. So this is a saying, I'm not sure if you've heard this, but it's worth for all of your listeners to hear. If you're not paying for the product, you're the product. Wow. Your data is the product. So everything you've done online becomes a little file about Claire Martin. And then the advertisers say, like, oh, Claire Martin, middle-aged, single mom, I bet she needs these kind of products. Bang. And there you go. And you start getting ads for those kinds of things.
So how does all of this affect our kids and their development? Because this is affecting us as adults quite majorly, right? So we're talking about little impressionable minds that are just soaking up everything.
Right. So couple of things to say just about little brains before we get into what steps we can take. So if you want to talk about things like limiting or balancing or having some control and intentional choice about online behavior, that's one thing for the two of us in midlife to say, all right, I'm going to get my online behavior under control. I'm going to set some limits for myself because, and of course, it's not always true for adults either, but we've matured enough that at least we understand the concept of self-control. And, maybe we've successfully exerted some self-control over areas of our lives. And it's the part of the brain that handles self-control and limits and emotional self-modulation and impulse control. That's the prefrontal cortex, which is in the front of the brain. And that's the area in the brain that matures last, which is why we think of some of those characteristics as mature behavior, right? It's very rare to have a 5-year-old say, I think that I'll skip the dessert because I want to, have a balanced nutrition. Like that would be surprising because
oh my God,
younger people are very, very much still governed by impulses and desires. I see it, I want it, I grab it. And some of that's just age and experience, but some of it is literally the brain is not done forming at that part of the brain. So if you say to them, well, just put your phone down, we're asking them to do something that's much harder. They can hear and understand the words, but it's much more difficult for them to actually implement because they don't have the wiring to do that yet. And that's where we start to get into power struggles between parents who've given the technology to the child, right? We buy these things for them, we give them to them, and we may even hand them to them when we're in restaurants or airplanes or shopping or something, or if you're on a Zoom call and you need them to be quiet. And we all did that during COVID, right? And then we turn around and yell at them for using it too much. So that's a parenting behavior that I think parents need to be self-aware about and mindful of, right? And so if you want to teach about balanced media use, it's very important to model it. And what you've described is actually a wonderful example of digital wellness. And kudos to your son for being able to articulate his needs. Mom, I need your attention. That's beautiful. Not a lot of young boys could articulate their emotions so clearly. And that you've set up a pattern where you devote your time and energy and attention to him intentionally. Shared media use is great because that's interactive. Right. So if you're playing Minecraft, or my son and I are big fans of Star Wars and Star Trek, and we watch together and talk about it. And I think that's very healthy. And shared fandom can be really bonding. And there are different concerns about elementary age kids, like kids in your son's age group, and teens. So I want to stay focused right now on the younger children because in a lot of ways it's easier. So you've got a little time, but your window of time is closing. Adolescence is approaching. So, and then once they do go on social media, more actively, then you have a different set of concerns, which I can speak to. But I want to talk about Carrots and Cake, and a wonderful tool that's available for parents who are open to having technology in their homes, but want to have a more balanced approach.
And look, I think, I was talking to somebody the other day about bringing up healthy boys and healthy girls and things like that, and healthy about their healthy in their mental state and how they think about things, and bringing them up in a way that to restrict, to say they should never be on computer games or things like that is probably not a good thing to do, right? And I can't believe this is coming out of my mouth. This is how their mates are. My son communicates with his friends on a Saturday morning by playing games with his friends online. And I can hear them chatting and talking and no, don't do that. And so they're all communicating. They're all in different houses and it's like 8 in the morning. So I wouldn't want them all at my house at 8 in the morning, but they're all communicating and talking. So I don't think we should stop them, but I think it's about monitoring and managing and getting them to experience different things as as technology. So sorry, you carry on.
That's okay. These are all great examples. So I love the story about your son and his mates. My son is now 21, but I remember very well when he was around 12, 13, and he would have similar sorts of online, video game play dates. And it's so much, you and I remember when we were young, the only way you could play with your friends is if someone drove you to their house or something, right? So that's a good example of one of the benefits of technology. It brings, there's pluses and minuses, and I am definitely not anti-tech. I understand and respect that there are parents out there who make a different choice and say absolutely no technology use until X age, or not in my house at all. When you grow up and have your own life, you can have different rules. But I think the problem with a completely no technology approach is then when kids come of age, they don't have any skills yet in how to navigate that environment. So suddenly they're 18 or 20 or 16 or whenever they finally get on into the digital sphere, and they are inexperienced. Which has, that has its own problems. So, and I just want to say one more thing about tools and technology, which is that I don't think technology has inherent traits. So if people say no technology, that it's like saying no books. Like there's good books and bad books. There's books that are worth reading. There are books that are a waste of time. I don't think, the printed word is inherently superior and a mediated image is inherently inferior. The content matters, the quality matters, and what you're doing with it matters. So I like to say it, these are just tools. Like a knife, you can use it to make dinner. You can use it to clean your fingernails. You can use it to hurt yourself or someone else. So now it's not the same as a knife in that there's all sorts of traits programmed into it. However, this is where education comes in. So once you start to teach people about things like persuasive design and the power of the like button, another technology feature, the infinite scroll. Have you ever gotten to the bottom of Instagram?
Oh, exactly. No.
Right? It's like a bottomless bowl of popcorn. So it's like handing a child a bottomless bowl of popcorn and saying, well, only eat this much. So this is where placing some time limits can help. So now let me tell you about the Carrots and Cake app. So I'm the educational consultant, and I do parental education for this company named Carrots and Cake. And I love the name because it's based on that old-fashioned parenting adage, eat your vegetables before you get your dessert. So the image there is that the carrots in this Carrots and Cake analogy are educational apps, educational games, learning, using the technologies to learn. So now, and then, so that's encouraging the use of learning apps. And then you get some cake time, which is whatever that you and the child together choose as their playtime
Reward.
online.
Yeah.
Right. And the order in which they do things matter. So you all have Duolingo and Khan Academy in Australia?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So those are examples, especially Duolingo is kind of gamified a little, and Khan Academy Kids is as well. There's plenty of learning apps.
There are so many that are free. The learning apps are what got me through COVID and lockdown, right? Because my son did not want to learn the conventional way, and he's all IT'd up to the max. And therefore, I made sure that during lockdown, and Melbourne was the most lockdown city in the world, right? That we actually I was working and he was online on a game that meant that he was adding or subtracting or doing whatever he needed to do, or spelling or whatever. But he did, but it was a game online, right? So it was half the battle it was online. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So for kids that are very drawn to these platforms already, the question is, let's make, the challenge is, let's make sure that their time online, whether it's on a phone or an iPad, the Carrots and Cake app is meant for the phone or an iPad. It encourages them to first learn, and then they get to play. So you, as the parent, can decide how much time are they going to spend doing the learning app. And then they get to have their cake time. And because children often struggle with transitions, and you probably already know this, there's a little trick like 10 more minutes, 5 more minutes. Like if you give kids a little alert that, all right, your playtime is going to come to an end soon. And then the app shuts off and they can't use the platform anymore. And you can also program it so that they can't go online at all, except to the places that you've already approved. And that's important because, the internet is got all kinds of things on it, particularly things that are meant for and made for and by adults. And adults should be able to consume adult content, but the internet isn't made for kids. And so Carrots and Cake blocks access to anything that, you can just turn off the internet access so that the only thing they can access is the pre-approved content.
Okay.
And it's wonderful because it can help alleviate the mom guilt, right? Or the dad guilt. Like if you need to hand your pad to your kid, or if they have their own one and you need them to be quiet for some reason, you don't have to have that guilt, and you can know they're doing something educational. And you also know it will come to an end, and the kids get used to that, because it's like anything end, books end, TV shows end, movies end, and now the app time ends, and then they can get offline and do something else. And depending on the age of your child, you can have some toys or other things set up so that they know when this finishes, they'll do this other thing. And maybe you can have a toy or a board game or things that go with the stuff they were doing online. So you have some continuity of learning. So, part of why I love working for Carrots and Cake is they're not anti-technology. This is about using technology to help create a more balanced and healthy relationship with technology.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Exactly right.
And, other parental control devices, because this is not the only company that offers this kind of thing, but a lot of the other parental control devices or apps are just about setting limits and a timer, and that's it. And there's not an emphasis on do some learning. Carrots and Cake provides suggestions for educational apps depending on the age of your child and what their interests are, so that you can customize the pad or the phone in such a way that it's perfect. It's like you take over the job of the algorithm.
Yeah, which is perfect, which is excellent. And let's face it, even as adults, we have Carrots and Cake.
Well,
so it's like, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour and then I can have a piece of cake or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Or you go to work and you get paid money. Happy days, right?
And And that's what part of what is great about Carrots and Cake is it teaches delayed gratification.
Yeah.
And that's tough for kids. And there's a lot of studies. Maybe you've heard of the marshmallow study, and they've shown that it's worth knowing about. They did some studies. If you put you put a plate of marshmallows in front of
and then tell the kids to wait until you get back into the room.
Well, they can eat one now, or if they wait 5 minutes, they can have three or something like that.
Right.
And the kids who are able, I didn't describe it quite right, but it's basically that idea. Yeah. And the ones who could wait, then they track them, in life, and this is more of a correlational data, so we don't know that one caused the other. But these traits are associated. The ability to delay gratification helps with success in life because, anything really worth succeeding, you got to work hard and you don't get the immediate reward. So Carrots and Cake also promotes the delayed gratification. They know they're going to get their time on Minecraft or Roblox or whatever, but first they've got to, do some multiplication. And that teaches them about, all right, work first, play later. That's a good life lesson.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I wanted to let you know that your listeners can have a free 60-day download of Carrots and Cake.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you go to the website, 60 days. Yep. So if you go to the website, it's Carrots and Cake, all put together one, carrotsandcake.com. You can learn more there. There's some articles and videos. And then if they use the code word human to go with your podcast, then there'll be a place where they can input the code and get their download. And if they have any questions about setting up the technology, the tech folks will be happy to answer them.
No, that's awesome. That's brilliant. And you've got things. So on the Carrots and Cake website, there are things there for parents to read up on, and
Right.
and there's Facebook and various different. I mean, you're all on the socials as well, so that's all good.
Yes,
so that's
we
awesome.
are.
That's awesome. So yeah, look, what just one final question for you, because I know you've got to go and we've got to finish up here. Look, one final piece question for you. What's a piece of advice that somebody has given you regarding using the socials that you have gone, wow, yeah, that's a good piece of advice, and you would impart that to other people?
So it goes with my idea of intentional attention. So if you find yourself, when you pick up your phone, you can have the practice of pausing and asking yourself, what am I here for? Like, what, not on earth. I mean, what am I like, what am I looking for? Why did I just pick up the phone?
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with it. Just be intentional.
Yeah.
So check in with yourself. What am I looking for? And be honest with yourself. Like, right now, I need to take a break from doing my taxes. This is boring or making me anxious. So then I'll say to myself, I am bored. I am, not liking this thing I'm doing. I need a dopamine break because I know about the brain science.
Yeah.
And I'll say, I'm going to do 10 minutes of scrolling. And, then you have to be honest. You have to use that prefrontal cortex and, keep your promise
it at 10 minutes.
Well, but just being conscious, being intentional. So just pausing and asking yourself, what am I doing here? And then the other thing I would recommend for teens and adults, it's different. With little ones are not supposed to be on social media, particularly, a whole bunch of YouTube is a slightly different category, but pay attention to how you feel after you do the scrolling. Like, do you actually feel better? If you notice that certain people that you follow piss you off, unfollow them or mute them if it's too complicated socially and you have to stay connected digitally. Just mute them. You do not have to expose yourself to stimulus that upsets you.
Yeah,
not
I agree.
Voluntary,
I agree.
Right?
And I have to say, and I don't know if it's my age, sometimes I sit there and I think, oh, it's probably my age. Like I do 10 minutes of scrolling and I go, oh my God, I'm so bored of this. So I get bored of scrolling. So I'm like,
Well, that's
right, let's go
good.
read a book. Let's go do
Right.
something different. Yeah. No.
Balance. It's all about
Yeah,
balance.
It is. It is. I sometimes get very good recipes online, right? So I'm not going to go there. That's my age though. But yeah, no, look, thank you so much, Gwenyth, for coming on board and educating us a little bit on the effects of digital media and how we can control it. Carrots and Cake is a wonderful app. Like it's great that you don't have to like ban your kids from using the digital media. Basically, you can. It's a plus, and it's a win-win. I think it's a win-win app. That's where I sit because the kids win and you win. You get some, free time, and the kids get what they need as well. So yeah.
Well, and they also learn about balance, and they learn about limits, and they hopefully do some learning while they're in the carrots part. So it's all good.
And that's what we need them to be doing, learning, educating their little minds, as well as having fun, right? That's right. Education should be fun. Cool, brilliant. Right. Look, thank you so much. It's your evening in New York, I think, isn't it?
It's 4:00 here, and I'm actually headed uptown now. So I'm
perfect. All right. Well, that sounds good. Okay. I've got to get kids to school, which is brilliant. So look, thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
And you have a good day. All right. It's been my pleasure. Take care.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.